concerns illegal dispensing of prescription drugs to college athletes. At the University of Arkansas, the problem is the focus of state and federal investigations.
The hogs are of God, and you do anything you can do to foster the hogs.
Controversy once again takes over the nation's capital. And Magic may be his name, but is he ready to take over the reins in Indy? These two are already taking over the Heisman race. We'll size up Saturday's showdown in Lincoln. The stakes are high for this weekend's PGA Championship, but we've got a tough price to beat. Stick around. We'll have you wide-eyed in amazement on SportsCenter next. Nice shot. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the hour-long SportsCenter alongside Charlie Steiner. I'm Robin Roberts. Bob Lee will join us in a moment. The baseball awards just keep on a-coming. Today, a biggie, MVP for the Big Hurt.
Another MVP award for a big player who is rapidly establishing himself as not only one of the best, are given to treat their injuries. With a look ahead at tonight's cover story, Bob Lee. Bob.
Well, the issue is prescription drugs, including narcotics, dispensed to college athletes. An NCAA study says many athletes receive drugs illegally from trainers without proper prescription or oversight by doctors. At the University of Arkansas, the problem goes back 40 years. Federal and state investigators are looking into training room procedures and focusing on the oversight over prescription drugs, and head trainer Dean Weber. Barry Foster played at Arkansas. He says he received drugs there without a doctor's involvement.
To be honest, I didn't even know we had a team doctor. Anytime I had a problem, or you know, any other players had problems, you just go to Dean and he would take care of it.
Prescription drugs, including narcotics, in athletic training rooms, a widespread problem, and one school story. That is ahead this evening on our SportsCenter cover story. And also tonight, what precautions the Cowboys are taking in the wake of Troy Aikman's latest concussion, and Norv Turner's decision on the future of Gus federal grand jury. Next up, we'll see what might give when Lawrence Phillips takes the third best rushing numbers in the country up against the Colorado defense this weekend.
News. Bob?
The Big Hurt, one of the better nicknames you will ever...
Practice before that was going on probably for 40 years.
Since we started making tires back in 1890.
Only doctors are legally permitted to prescribe drugs.
In fact, athletic trainers are not permitted to dispense the drugs, but that law is honored more in the breach. With more, here is tonight's cover story with Bob Lee.
Well, federal law is rather specific about who can handle prescription drugs, especially controlled substances. The problem arises when years of habits and practice in athletic locker rooms slip over the line and become illegal. At the University of Arkansas, federal and state charges may shortly be filed against school personnel. Part of the probe concerns what role painkillers might have played in last year's suicide of a Razorback football player. Drugs in the training room. Tonight's cover story. Injured college athletes are often treated with illegally dispensed drugs. It is a pervasive problem documented in an NCAA Commission study. That study was conducted 3 years ago, but the abuses persist today. That, according to the sports pharmacist who did the research and personally observed 30 Division I schools. Every school studied illegally dispensed prescription drugs.
There were questionable practices going on. There were illegal drug distribution practices. We found unqualified personnel dispensing medications. And we found that in the athletic department there were, the drugs were very accessible to anyone that would like to have access to the drugs in the training room.
By law, prescription medication must be dispensed by doctors or by pharmacists acting on a physician's prescription. It is apparently easy for university doctors and trainers to slip over the line and break federal drug laws.
I think in many instances, people who have responsibility, whether trainer, coach, athletics director, president, have often not been concerned about fulfilling that responsibility, and have sort of taken the attitude, well, if I don't know really what's going on, then I can't be held responsible for that.
At the University of Arkansas, athletic training room drug procedures are the subject of federal and state investigations. The school changed its long-standing drug purchase and dispensing policies in January after problems came to the attention of the school's chancellor.
The practice before that was going on probably for 40 years.
This was the practice. Trainers ordered drugs in bulk with nominal authorization by physicians. Drugs were stockpiled in the Broyles Center training room, where full-time trainers and even student trainers dispensed medication. Investigators believe this practice involved athletes from nearly every varsity program, as well as university employees and relatives of coaches. Prescription drugs, including controlled substances, potentially addicting narcotics, provided without a doctor's diagnosis or prescription. Pittsburgh Steeler back Barry Foster started Arkansas in the late 80s. He recalls the ease with which he says he obtained prescription medication without a doctor's involvement.
To be honest, I didn't even know we had a team doctor. Anytime I had a problem or, any other players had problems, you just go to Dean and he would take care of it.
Dean is Dean Weber, the university's director of athletic training, who until last year held the title Director of Sports Medicine, though his biography lists only a bachelor's degree. Weber is a 22-year veteran of the Razorback Athletic Department. He declined to discuss the training room drug dispensing policies with Sports Center. The athletic department's drugs in recent years were ordered in the name of Dr. James Park, a team physician. Federal law required Park to hold a DEA license to order drugs in bulk quantity. Park also declined to be interviewed. University pharmacist Bill Altland brought to light possible illegalities in the school's purchasing and dispensing of drugs.
Did Dr. Park have this license?
No, he did not. And that's one reason why the pharmacy shouldn't have been filling these bulk orders in Dr. Park's name. In Arkansas, he wasn't legally licensed to fill those drugs. But beyond that, even if he was, you would have to keep records of the drugs. And for the controlled drugs, you have to have special records.
The investigation has not produced any such records, except for a rudimentary dispensing record for a recent 15-month period. Arkansas State Police compared that record with school purchase orders that contain Weber's signature or that of head basketball trainer Dave England and the stamp signature of athletic director Frank Broyles. England and Broyles declined to be interviewed. These orders totaled 40,000 doses of controlled substances. The state police comparison revealed nearly 10,000 of those doses unaccounted for. Drug purchases were also out of proportion to the number of Arkansas athletes, according to authorities and the school pharmacist.
It was a whole lot for that population base. It's just inordinate amount of Darvocets, Tylenol 3s, Lamotals, even Valium. The quantities were so large that could only be for out-of-doctor's office use. It was for a pharmacy. So to me, that was unusual, and to me, that seemed illegal.
Under the old policies, the athletic department ordered drugs in bulk from this store for over a decade, until the pharmacist who owned the store sold it. That pharmacist said the motivation for supplying the training room was greed and loyalty to the Razorbacks.
The Hogs are God. And you do anything you can do to foster the Hogs.
In his case, selling the Arkansas Athletic Department controlled substances to provide Razorback athletes with what federal investigators say were hundreds of thousands of illegal doses of prescription drugs.
But if I wasn't a University of Arkansas athlete, if I needed Darvocet, Lamotil, Tylenol with codeine, I walked into your shop.
No, you could not do
I'd have to have a prescription written by a physician.
That is correct.
But a University of Arkansas trainer could pick up the phone and order these in mass quantities from you?
Yes, sir.
And he did not have to say that Dr. So-and-so or Dr.
No, sir.
Of the drugs that the University of Arkansas ordered from your shop, the vast overwhelming majority of those drugs was ordered by trainers without a specific medical prescription from a doctor.
Yes, sir.
Darvocet is a Class 4 controlled substance that can cause drowsiness and be habit-forming. Darvocet, also known as propoxyphene, was the pain-killing narcotic most commonly bought by the school. Doctors are warned by the drug's manufacturer not to prescribe it for people with depression. Independent research shows a proven link to suicide. The DEA and state police continue to investigate what role, if any, Darvocet and how it was acquired may have played in last year's suicide of Razorback linebacker Shannon Wright. Wright shot himself in October of 1993. He had attempted suicide once before and had a history of depression. Wright's longtime girlfriend, Catherine Carson, was also a university athlete. She says she was given painkillers by trainers and that Wright was receiving treatment for an injury prior to his death, treatment that included painkillers. Carson was interviewed by state police. Wright's autopsy did not reveal any drugs, but only his blood was tested, not tissue or urine, which would retain Darvocet for a longer period of time. The Fayetteville Police Department told SportsCenter there is no evidence at this time to warrant reopening the probe into Wright's death. According to sources with knowledge of the federal and state investigations, the issue of training room drug procedures at Arkansas may shortly lead to charges being filed. Those same sources say Dean Weber, the University Director of Athletic Training, may face federal criminal charges and civil fines. Team physician Dr. James Park, in whose name the drugs were ordered, is also being investigated, as are Dave England, the head basketball trainer, and Scott Unruh, an assistant trainer. Unruh declined to be interviewed. SportsCenter has learned that plea bargaining has begun and that the University of Arkansas may face a federal civil penalty as large as $250,000.
Is it only happening at Arkansas?
According to my study, no. We can say with a large degree of certainty that it's going on nationwide.
The University of Arkansas recently instituted new guidelines for the storage and dispensing of prescription drugs. That federal grand jury that's been investigating the school's prescription drug situation is scheduled to meet again next Tuesday and Wednesday. As we continue on SportsCenter, we will turn on our SportsCenter night lights with a look at Scottie Pippen, starting some tradition at the United Center. And the greatest receiver in football, until Jerry Rice took that mantle away, could be in line to beat Rice to an all-time honor. That news coming up.
Claims it violated federal law. Good evening, I'm Karen Fuller.
And I'm Rob Johnson. An 8-month investigation into the Razorback Athletic Department is over. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Fort Smith announced a series of plea agreements reached with the university.
Investigators with the state police and the Drug Enforcement Agency had been looking into charges the university freely gave out controlled substances to athletes without any records or doctors involved.
Channel 7's David Schuster begins our coverage in Fort Smith.
At a news conference in the federal courthouse, U.S. Attorney P.K. Holmes said trainers in the Razorback athletic program knew over 2 years ago they were violating NCAA regulations and federal law. Holmes said doctors were never around when athletes picked up packets of highly addictive painkillers.
The delivery man would take controlled substances to the athletic department, and he would leave them there with somebody who he recognized who was usually a student trainer. A student trainer would take these controlled substances, and what he would do is he would stock them in the cabinet.
Holmes said the university dispensed over 10,000 dosage units to athletes over a 2-year period, but the university could only account for 300.
The system that they had created there was one in which they wanted to provide the best possible medical care for athletes, when in fact that's not what they had. They had a situation where they had student trainers at the direction of Mr. Weber and Mr. England giving pain medication to athletes.
Dean Weber, the head athletic trainer, has agreed to plead guilty to one misdemeanor charge punishable by up to a year in prison and a $25,000 fine. He has also agreed to pay a civil penalty of $5,000. David England, another athletic trainer, has agreed to plead guilty to the same charge. Investigators say the drugs were given to athletes under the name of Dr. John Park. Park is a team physician. He has agreed to pay a $75,000 fine and will not be allowed to dispense drugs for 2 years. Athletic Director Frank Broyles was not charged.
It was his management of the athletic department, or should I say mismanagement, that permitted this situation to occur. But he had no direct involvement in it.
Aside from the athletes, some of the other students involved included graduate assistants and trainers. Holmes said 2 of the trainers lied to the grand jury about what was going on, but later changed their story. Holmes said that in the early stages of the investigation, the DEA and the Arkansas State Police had some difficulty finding out what was really happening at the University of Arkansas. David Schuster, Channel 7 News, live in Fort Smith.
David, a few misdemeanor charges and some fines seem rather tame for an 8-month investigation. What was the reason?
Well, the investigators said that even though the situation created the potential for abuse, they said that there was no evidence of any profiteering or sale of drugs, or none of the trainers were feeding the students addiction in any way, so that they said that with the university finally cooperating, that the plea arrangement worked out today. The fines of $100,000 for the university and the misdemeanor charges, they felt that that was very appropriate.
Okay, David Schuster reporting live from Fort Smith.
And Rob, this is a controversy that's been building for months at the U of A, and officials in Fayetteville were quick to respond. Channel 7's Chris May is on the university campus and brings us this report via News Star 7.
Wednesday afternoon, U of A Athletic Director Frank Broyles issued his department's only statement on the prescription drug controversy. He was short and to the point.
We regret this ordeal and the attention that it has brought to our great university. The only violations charged involve our record-keeping policies.
Broyles then refused to take questions from reporters, but others on the U of A campus were more forthcoming, particularly Bill Altland, the U of A pharmacist who blew the whistle on the drug dispensing program. From this Fayetteville pharmacy, Altland witnessed thousands of doses of prescription drugs being sold to U of A personnel who were not licensed to distribute them. He says those involved got off easy.
I'm pretty sure there's enough evidence to warrant more if they wanted to pursue that, but I feel like the U.S. attorney was very charitable in, what he's handed down.
Neither Dean Weber, who practiced Wednesday afternoon with the Razorback football team, nor Dave England would comment on their plea bargain agreements, though England did say he may talk to the media, quote, when this is all over. U of A Chancellor Dan Ferriter says both the trainers and the university were hit with substantial sanctions, but he does concede one point.
We made mistakes.
However, he says all the proper steps have been taken to assure it can't happen again.
We have changed the structure of all of our medication in the training room, and it's now under the complete and total control of the team physician and our student health center.
And that's where Bill Altland says the drugs should be, not in the hands of student trainers who have no business distributing drugs to athletes. I'm Chris May reporting live via News Star 7 in Fayetteville. Rob, back to you in Little Rock.
Chris, you spent the day in Fayetteville. Do officials there believe that this is going to harm the university's image?
Karen, I asked that same question of Chancellor Dan Ferriter today, and he told me it shouldn't harm the image of either the school or the athletic department, because over the years they have run a clean program here at Arkansas. But he says it does show that athletes here at Arkansas shouldn't be held to a higher standard than any other student.
All right, Chris. Chris, thanks. Rob?
Back here in Central Arkansas.
And I'm Karen Fuller. The fine stems from an 8-month investigation into the school's athletic department.
State police and drug enforcement officers were looking into charges the university gave athletes drugs without involving any doctors.
And now 2 trainers are pleading guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges. Tom Ryan begins his report in Fort Smith.
U.S. Attorney P.K. Holmes made public Wednesday details of the investigation. Holmes said the trainers knew back in 1992 they were violating NCAA rules and federal law. He says players were given addictive drugs without a doctor's supervision.
It's that the delivery man would take controlled substances to athletic department, and he would leave them there with somebody who he recognized who was usually a student trainer. A student trainer would take these controlled substances, and what he would do is he would stock them in the cabinet.
Head athletic trainer Dean Weber and trainer David England have agreed to plead guilty to 1 misdemeanor charge each. The penalty, up to a year in prison and a $25,000 fine. Investigators say drugs were given out under the name Dr. John Park. Park is the team doctor. He faces a $75,000 fine and cannot dispense drugs for 2 years. Holmes says U of A athletic director Frank Broyles should be held accountable.
There's absolutely no evidence of abuse whatsoever in the use of the drugs from our training room facility. And second, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that anyone profited from the illegal sale or use of these prescription drugs.
Now, even though the U.S. attorney in this case, Karen Holmes, blames Frank Broyles for this entire situation, Broyles himself is not being charged. Now, to give you an idea of the magnitude of the situation at the university, they apparently dispensed 10,000 dose units over the course of a 2-year period. They were only able to produce records for just 300. Karen?
Tom, this is serious. Why were the charges only misdemeanors?
Well, according to Holmes, he says that's because there is no evidence simply to show that anyone profited from this arrangement.
All right, Tom, thanks.
And since 6, Channel 7 News has learned that the Nashville State Committee will hold a news conference tomorrow morning. The committee will announce plans to appeal a court decision today that took proposed Amendment 2 off the November 8th ballot. Pulaski County Chancery Judge Ellen Brantley removed the so-called